The Evil Within is a very interesting and charming but flawed survival horror game. Despite what some dementia-infested people might say, Evil Within is a survival horror game. I'm sick of these guys pretending like horror games either play like garbage or take away all weapons to be a good survival horror. This game is full of creativity and interesting mechanics for this genre, and it's actually pretty criminal that it usually goes unmentioned among some of the best horror game lists and rankings or whatever. What makes this game so special compared to a lot of other horror games is that, at least in my eyes, I get the feeling the developers didn't give a shit about logic in regards to the setting or anything like that. You'll go from various places with different enemy types and make literally no sense at all, but you don't usually care because of how well designed the levels and enemies are. To get into what separates Evil Within from other horror games, we'll need to talk about what's most important, the gameplay. It is insane to me that people have been brainwashed by YouTubers to believe, oh, horror games can't have guns in them. The fact that I've seen this as a complaint from back in 2014, and some of my friends even believe this, is crazy. Have you never heard of Resident Evil? Just because a game isn't created to be a hide-and-seek simulator does not mean it's a bad horror game, or not a horror game at all. The Evil Within says, F all of that. We're gonna make the game focus on being fun to play first and foremost. Combat-wise, you have your basic weapons, your pistol, your shotgun, some grenades, but you also have a pretty cool crossbow that allows you to use elemental bolts that can bring different effects like shocking, freezing, exploding, or blinding enemies. My only complaint with the crossbow is that there are certain bolts locked behind a pre-order bonus. Whatever dumbass came up with that genuinely needs a whooping. Besides the crossbow, another interesting mechanic are the matches. After downing an enemy, you can light a match on their corpse and kill them instantly, also lighting any enemy on top of them on fire as well. This is a pretty cool mechanic to use in game as there's a risk factor in getting so close and letting the animation play, and it was a deliberate design choice to have the animation be a little slow, but it's also worth getting rid of an enemy as soon as possible. My only complaints with this system are how inconsistent the spread is, because you can burn a body right underneath an enemy, and they somehow won't get lit on fire, which is complete bull and can allow for a free hit. My other complaint is that sometimes you'll initiate the animation like 5 times in combat and it still won't play, which is complete bull and can allow for a free hit. The matches are cool and usually work properly, but that unusual time where they don't can get you killed. The only thing with this is, when matches are first introduced to you, there's a dead body on the ground and it prompts you to burn it and encourages you to burn it in the tutorial. But, you probably shouldn't do this because matches are most well used when you down an enemy and then burn the body, and especially when there's enemy near them. So I wouldn't recommend just burning any body willy-nilly, even though the game makes it kind of seem like that's what you should do to not stop it from getting up. But yeah, don't make that mistake that I did my first like 2 times using a match before I realized that it was completely pointless and a waste of them. Even though there is a decent amount of them throughout the game, that you'll run out sometimes, but not all the time if you use it wisely. Taking a step backwards though, the gunplay is satisfying and each headshot feels brutal and impactful to pull off, as well as the melee combat is also, well, it's not very fun to use, but I did it anyway because I just really like that moment where you bash the head in and then it just gets all over your head and your shirt. And now that I'm saying this out loud and hearing myself, it sounds a little psychotic and a little unhealthy, but I promise that I only mean this in the context of the game mostly. One problem with the gunplay though is that the camera kind of sucks. Well, kind of is an understatement. This camera is fucking atrocious. I don't know how the guy that created Resident Evil 4, the game that changed gaming forever with the camera perspective and basically launched an entire wave of games inspired by it for its incredible camera placement. I don't know how the same guy managed to make one of the worst cameras I've ever seen in any of these kinds of games before, because you can barely see anything besides Sebastian's like nose tip while you're aiming, which it can add to the tension, I guess. Maybe that was the point, but it's also just feels clunky and kind of unfun to play with sometimes. It's not that bad to the point that it's always in the way, but when it's in the way, it really is, and it can cause for some moments where you could have easily hit a headshot in any other video game, but in this one, it just, you just don't. And talking more about the camera, I'm normally the type of person that where I don't care about an FOV slider or anything like that. I don't really mess with that kind of stuff in games, but this game desperately needs one, or at least a better placement for the camera or something, because I can't do it. I hate the way the camera is placed, and I hate the shaky cam too. Like, it's, you get used to it, but I wish you could turn it off. I would prefer if you could turn it off, because I'd probably turn it off myself and adjust the FOV a little bit, or like just do something. Tweak this camera placement, man. do something to make this a little bit more, I don't know, like any other video game that's come out in the last like what, like 20 years. And I have to address something because literally everyone else on the planet has said it already. But Sebastian cannot run in this game. He runs and then he just runs out of breath immediately. And he honestly, I think he runs out of breath faster than me. And I have asthma. And like, if my fat, somewhat debatable sexy ass can run faster than you and do more than you without running out of breath, then there is no excuse for a guy that is a trained cop, a guy that has gone through some serious situations and come out on top. There's no way that you're running out of breath after 2 seconds, bro. Like, I can't buy it. But, honestly, I did get used to this, and I didn't mind it after like 2 chapters. And I actually kind of like it because well, first of all, you can upgrade it, which I'll get more into the upgrades later, but I don't mind it because one, you can upgrade it, and two, I actually feel like you have enough stamina to last you in a combat sequence. Like, if you're in a tight corner or something, you can dash out the way and still have enough breath to get to a better placement before shooting again. Like, it's not like you just can't do anything without running out of breath. You can still do a decent amount of work, which is something that I appreciate. It could have been way worse in that regard. You run out of stamina in like 2 seconds. You can't even get away from the enemy in time. But you have just enough to where you can maneuver around and fix your placement, but it also doesn't make the game brain dead easy where you can just constantly sprint and avoid ever having to get into close encounters. There's also a stealth mechanic in this game, which, I mean, the enemies can detect you and it alerts you when they're at different levels of detection, I guess. You can hide in lockers or underneath beds or something, and you can sneak behind enemies and stealth kill them with throw bottles to distract them. But do you really care about going to in depth and the stealth of the evil within? I mean, honestly, I mean, you use it when you can to save some ammo and things like that. But it's not exactly a very fun way to play the game because, well, the stealth in this game is kind of not very fun or good. That could just be because I don't like stealth in general. But I mean, there are some games where I don't mind it as much as I mind it here. And the only reason I mind it here is because sometimes the way you stealth kill enemies makes no sense to me. Like, you'll just go up behind them and then try to stealth kill them, and they won't even give you the option to unless you're right, like, in your face is in their ass cheeks, which I don't understand that at all. But then other times you can stealth kill them from like a decent amount away, and I don't get that. As well as if you hit them with the crossbow, then even if you hit a perfect headshot, it doesn't kill them while you're in stealth. I don't mind that in regular combat, but I feel like in stealth I should be able to instantly kill them with a crossbow bolt to the head and just have a better way to go about stealth versus just having to instantly start a confrontation at the moment I shoot a bolt. But that's just my opinion. That's my perspective on it. Moving on to things that we actually do care about, this game reminds me a lot of Resident Evil 4 and Dead Space when it comes to the enemies. Like, just right there on the screen, that is straight out of Dead Space with the animation and everything. And then, as you'll see here, it can also camouflage just straight out of Resident Evil 4. And I love this. In my opinion, the action horror is the best of the genre, and I feel like it's very satisfying and always fun to play. And I will never understand these people that are like, oh, a horror game should always be focused on puzzles and all the like, no, screw that. Action horror is the way to go. It's peak horror, and it always is and always will be. And I'm sorry to say, but Resident Evil 4 and Resident Evil 5 will always be on top, and I mean that shit, bro. But moving on from that, to describe Evil Within, I think it's best to compare it to the Evil Dead trilogy, to where it goes through a roller coaster of different styles, where like it leans heavily on horror in some parts, like when you're feeling claustrophobic in the house or everything like that, and you have no weapons really, and you have to make do with things around you, and you lose your guns and stuff. But then it also leans heavily into the action side of when you're running down, gunning down a bunch of enemies and fighting for your life against waves of threats in this arena. I love it. I wish more games did this to where it balances different kinds of horror, well, which provides a unique experience for each player depending on what you enjoy more. Similarly to other games of the genre, there's a safe area in the Evil Within that you can go to, usually by accessing a mirror or by, just going to it at the end of the chapter, which will take you there, and then you can upgrade your weapons and different stats for Sebastian, which I barely talked about Sebastian. The main character of the game named Sebastian. He's pretty average, your average protagonist. He delivers some lines and everything like that. He reacts to the world around him, which I mean, I would say he's above average though, because I think his lines are actually good and make sense for the world, and his reactions are natural. He's a pretty average guy. You know, likable enough, and he's not very anything noteworthy or stand out in this game. But that could change with the sequel. You'll just have to wait and see. Moving on from that, though, Tatiana, the nurse there, she'll guide you to this different area where you can once again upgrade your weapons, Sebastian stats, and everything like that, as well as access a back locker room where you can unlock it. Will unlock each locker using one key, and you'll get a randomly generated item, which could be either gel, which is the thing that you use to upgrade yourself, which you can also pick off of dead bodies, or smash crates to find, like in Resident Evil, or you can get ammo or anything like that, really. When it comes to the story of The Evil Within is nothing to write home about. It's alright, serviceable. The most interesting parts are really at the beginning and at the end, which maybe is a good thing for a story, but in the middle bits, there's not really much to latch on to, besides the fact that you like Joseph and Kidman, and even then, Kidman is barely in the game, and Joseph, well, okay, how do I put this? If you hated Ashley in the original RE4, or if you hate the Angel in Distress characters, you might as well uninstall the game right now, because Joseph will get into the most insane trouble for no reason. Joseph will run out into the open and get himself nearly killed to the point where Sebastian has to save him multiple times, and then at some point you even have to go back for his fucking glasses, man. Like, it's unbelievable how many times that this guy almost gets us killed, and he's voiced by Yuri Lowenthal, so the entire time he was speaking, I just kept hearing Yosuke and Spider-Man get bodied every second, in every fight, in every moment that he's in the game. You're always wondering, when do I have to save him next? And it's traumatizing. Like, look at this nigga. He almost got me and him killed over something stupid. So then after this moment, this shit happens, and it makes it even worse.
Huh? What the hell? It's just a matter of time.
Bro, what are you talking about, man?
It's better this way. What the fuck?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, Sebastian. Why? Why? But anyway, then there's Kidman who, who has very nice heels. I mean, is a very compelling character. But anyways, yeah, Kidman is a little important to the plot, just a little bit. But what I find really interesting about this story is that a lot of it's told through the journal entries from Sebastian, which includes his backstory, his traumatic past, which makes him do the things that he does and act the way that he acts. But then it also reveals that he had suspicions about Kidman from the beginning, and I find that very interesting, and I like that a lot. I like the fact that the story is told through these little entries, and some might say it hurts the game, and that some would be me, but I feel like the reason why I say that is because even though I like the way the story is told through those, I feel like it takes away from me because there's so many cutscenes in this game. Not an abundance where you're like constantly in the damn cutscene like a lot of other games, but more just like there's a lot of story moments. I find it weird that they didn't tell this interesting story that's way more interesting than anything that's happening in the game through the cutscenes, because I find that stuff to be way more interesting than the stuff actually happening in the main story. So I can't really add bonus points to the main central story if it isn't a part of that. And that's the one thing that draws me away from the story even more. So would I say the story is worth playing the game? No, I would not recommend buying this game if you only are interested in the plot or the lore. Go watch a damn video. But I would recommend it if you want a good survival horror experience and a fun game in general. I like this game a lot, but before I end this video off, I have to talk about a semi-complaint, semi-unbridled sucking. So give me a second. Actually, I can't put it any other way. The boss fights in this game range from fine to good to really good, as in the keeper level of good, which I guess it's more of an enemy introduction than a boss fight. But the keeper area, this is the part of the game that you always think of first when you think of the Evil Within, because of how impactful it is, how well designed this area is, and how amazing the keeper is. And bro, the art direction in this game is insane. Akumi Nakamura, my goat, she locked in with these enemy designs, bro. The Keeper is such a well-designed enemy, iconic, even I would say, and this area is just so amazing. You always think of it first. But then there's also boss fights like this, which makes you want to kill